Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
Yeah, exactly. Hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Where are the kids?
Go ahead.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
We are going to start on page 10 with Maya Hayom as everyone gets settled. So it's the second song on page 10.
Maya Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you all for being here, and again, Shabbat Shalom. This evening is really a wonderful and special evening for myself and so many others as we recall the trip to Israel that we took about a month ago. And it's also the very last day of our 40th anniversary year, and part of the trip was the very last event for the year, so it's apropos. So we'll be hearing from some of those that went on the trip, and to kick us off, I would like to invite Addie. Come on up. I didn't want to scare you. And those of you that don't know Addie, she is fabulous. She's our lead B'nai Mitzvah tutor coordinator, and and is really wonderful. So thank you so much. We're going to get you the mic, and
Maybe. Muted?
turn it on. And those of you that will be speaking this evening,
No, it's on at the bottom.
make sure you're speaking all the way into the mic. Hold on one second.
We'll get it squared away.
I'll just talk loudly.
Oh, wait. Okay, Addie, go ahead and get us started.
Okay.
And this is mostly for those of you that aren't able to be with us this evening. We will get this mic fixed, so let's practice some lip reading in the meantime.
So when Harvey first said that he was interested in finding out about the trip, I was kind of surprised because we,
Speak right into it, please.
for those of you who don't know, we lived in Israel for many, many years, and Harvey has not been back to Israel since we moved here some 34 years ago. So I was kind of surprised, and I said, well, okay, I will check to see what is actually planned for the trip, because I don't want it to be going places and seeing things that we have been to and done 1,000 times over the years that we lived there. I was very pleased to see that there were all kinds of interesting things going on. And truly, the part that I loved the best about the trip was the fact that it was not your typical sightseeing trip. I mean, yes, we went to Haifa to see the Baha'i Temple. And yes, of course, we were in Jerusalem to see, to go to the Western Wall and things like that. And yes, we drove around Tel Aviv and went to the place where the Declaration of the State was signed and things like that. But more than that, what really, really, really amazed me was the things that we did, not the things that we saw. We took food to soldiers on the Lebanese border. We took a Jeep ride on the Golan Heights. We went to glue tile ceramic onto a peace wall at the Gaza Strip. Just amazing stuff. We had the chance to get a feeling for what is going on in Israel today, and to happily know that there are people trying to make a difference, and we were allowed to meet and hear from a lot of them. Of all of the things that we did and all the places that we went, everything touched me in that way. And I think because I am an archaeologist at heart, I should have been an archaeologist, my most absolute favorite activity was walking in the tunnels underneath what would have been the Temple Mount. It was so incredibly fascinating. But as I said, what thrilled me was the people that we got to hear from, and the fact that we packed food for people who are food insecure. We had the chance to buy jewelry made by Ethiopians who study in a school that was founded by a major jeweler in the country. It was just a do trip, not just a see trip, and that was fabulous for me.
Thank you. And I would echo that. And thank you, Addie, so much for those words. One of the participants, and I apologize if you're here and or listening, came up to me towards the end of the trip, or maybe even on the flight home, and said, there's only one way to describe this experience, and it was inspiring. Everything we did inspired a different part of your soul, of your neshama, of your spirit, of being Jewish. And I just think it's also apropos that our sort of tagline is an inspired Jewish life. And so we're going to hear more and more about these inspired experiences. We are going to continue in just a moment. So if everyone wants to turn to page 2, we are going to continue with a song called Light These Lights. It's not in here. Most of us that come fairly regularly know it. And as we sing through this, I'd like for the mitzvah corps to join us. So from Camp Coleman, which is the URJ camp, we have our own Lauren here with us, and she's leading the trip. So come on up. Just wait.
Oh, hear my prayer, I sing to you. Be gracious to the ones I love, and bless them with goodness and mercy and peace. Oh, hear my prayer to you. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen.
Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehad likner shel Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lechad likner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
We'll get there.
There we go.
Awesome. And thank you for joining us for Shabbat. And as we continue to hear from our participants and our congregants, earlier, I think it was last week, Paula Wilson, who's also on the trip, many of you may know her, shared with me a beautiful reflection about our Kabbalat Shabbat experience in Jerusalem. And it was outside, it was beautiful, in nature, and I think, where's Paul? There she is. Come on forward and share that with us, please.
Going to Israel for the first time with my sister and my TKE family was a journey that I am so grateful I went on. Other than the obvious sights, the wall, Yad Vashem, the Dead Sea, and Masada, I didn't know what to expect. I figured that I would feel overwhelmed with spirituality when I was at the wall, but it wasn't quite that way. It was crowded, a lot kind of going on. It was meaningful. I was at the wall. I thought that going to Yad Vashem would make me feel reduced in a puddle of tears. Of course, I was sad, but I was more moved by the righteous among the nations, especially when I saw the statue of the unnamed ones. I remember Lisa telling me on the way there that you don't know when you will feel an emotional connection. You were right. The first time I felt a significant connection to Israel was when we attended an outdoor Kabbalat, spiritual Friday night Shabbat service with music and dancing. Kari, our guide and new friend, came over to me and pointed out that I was sitting beneath a pomegranate tree. She got to know all of us well early on and knew what we liked. She knew that I got excited about pomegranate trees. I grabbed hold of the branch as if I was holding a loved one's hand. Then I noticed all the mezuzot and other Judaic items and the people all over the place, and realized that I was a Jewish person, was not a minority in Israel. The most meaningful time for me was more than just a moment. It was the feeling of being Jewish with my sister and my community. I treasure my time in Israel. It surpassed all my expectations.
There we go. Still getting used to the on and off there. Thank you, Paula. That was, I don't know how we're going to continue to build on that. That was really beautiful. And what I wanted to just sort of touch on is I shared this with a lot of those first-timers. And it was a piece of advice given to me when I led my first birthright trip. And it was, everybody says you're going to have a moment at the wall. 9 times out of 10, you don't have a moment at the wall. And you don't know, as Paula said, where that moment's going to come. So thank you for sharing your moment with us. We continue on page 20 and 21 with Lecha Dodi. And we're going to do verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. And on verse 9, you'll see everyone will rise, we'll turn to the back, and then we'll continue and turn back forward and continue.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad Ishmiyanu v'cham echad Adonai echad Shemo echad V'shem el tiferet v'litila Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lekuven elcha Tihi mikor kameracha Birosh mikenem nisuka So makase b'machafata hila Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Itoriri, Itoriri, Kiva Ore Kubiri, Uri, Uri, Shidabiri, Yivod Adonai, Lalek Nikla, Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat Nekabela. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat Nekabela. Oiv shalom ateret bala, kam besimcha v'tzola, tokemudei am segula, boi chala, Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
And you may remain standing. You take a little rest, but we're going to stand again. And we are going to continue on page 28 with the Baruch Hu. Oh, just kidding. We're going to do the Reader's Kaddish first. I skipped over that part. So we're going to turn to page 26 and do the Reader's Kaddish.
Yid Gadol v'Yid Kadash Shemei Rabbah V'Alma Divrach Hirutei Yamlich Malchutei B'chayechon Uv'yomechon Uv'chayedech Kol Beit Yisrael Ba'gala Ba'gala Uv'izmahan Kahariv V'meru Amen. Yesh Me'Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Ol Me'omaya Yitbarach Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalohol Shemei Kudesha B'rechu Le'olomim Kol Berchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Da'amihin Ran V'yalma V'meru Amen.
And we continue standing and continue on page 28.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Amivorach Baruch Adonai Amivorach Le'olam Va'ed.
We continue on page 34 with the Shema.
Shema Israel,
Israel,
Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Machato. Leolam va'ed. Baruch Shem Kivod Machato. Leolam va'ed. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
You may be seated. We continue on page 36 with the V'ahavta.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha, v'dibarta ba'am, b'shivtecha b'veitecha, uvlaktecha havaderech, uvshakpecha ukumecha, ukshartam leot ayodecha, v'hayu totafot beineinecha, uktavtam Amazuzot beitecha, uvisharecha, lema'an tizkeru, vasitem et omosotai, vitem kadoshim lelohechem, ahani, Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti etchem, meretz Mitzrayim, Liot lachem l'Elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem.
So I'm just going to take a moment here. This is traditionally in the service when we sing Micha Mocha, which I was gently reminded that depending on how we pronounce Micha Mocha, it might sound like a good mocha. So we all make slight slips every once in a while. With that being said, instead of Micha Mocha, this evening we chose, and based on some feedback, to do Miriam song. And I believe we have some dancers, some maybe ruach in the room. We have some timbrels. So the connection between Miriam and timbrels and singing about freedom at this time is that Miriam, being Moses' older sister, gathered all of the women as she crossed with us to the other side of the sea when it parted, and in celebration of being free. This song is going to sing a lot about that. So, those of you that have timbrels, and those of you that have ruach, and those of you that want to come and dance, please come forward. One other piece, since this is when we talk about our prophetess during our service. A couple weeks ago, I wore my Miriam tallis, but this week I chose to wear a different one because on our trip, we learned about an effort called Women of the Wall. And this is all about allowing equality and for women and for mixed prayer at the wall. And my tallis this evening is part of a special series made by Emmanuel for Women of the Wall. And especially unique is that it has our 4 matriarchs stitched on the corners, along with our tzitzit. So with that,
I wanted to just add that one of the best parts of that Shabbat service that we went to in the garden was that we got up twice in the service, at Matadodi and at the last song.
so for those of you,
And they got us up. They got everybody up.
so for those of you that didn't hear Sue, she was sharing that part of what made that Shabbat service in Israel so very special was the ruach and the dancing and just the community. And so that's another reason that we're bringing it here this evening.
Page 342.
Thank you.
And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance all night long. And Miriam was a weaver of unique variety. The tapestry she wove, which one would sing our history. In every strand and every thread she crafted her delight. A woman touched with spirit as she danced towards the light. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance all night long. When Miriam stood upon the shore and gazed across the sea, the wonder of this miracle she seemed to believe. Whoever thought the sea would part with an outstretched hand, and we would pass to freedom and march to the promised land. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance all night long. And Miriam the prophet took her timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her just as she had planned. And Miriam raised her voice and song she sang with praise and might. We just lived through a miracle, we're gonna dance tonight. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance all night long. Mi hamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi hamocha ne'edav kodesh, Dora tehilot osei felech, Dora tehilot osei felech. Woo!
That was absolutely beautiful.
That was awesome.
It's amazing. So one of the unique things about this trip is that we had 4 Lisas, 2 Dianes and a Diana, 2 Larrys, 3, thank you, 3, I couldn't remember Karen, thank you. Yeah, 3 Karens. And we had 5 sets of sisters on this trip. So one of our sets of sisters reached out and said that she had 2 very special poems that she wanted to share with us this evening. And I don't see her here, but her sister is here. And so I'd like to call Diana forward to share the poem. Okay. And this is about your mother and how she had always wanted to go to Israel. And Arlene's first trip was right after she passed, right?
And Arlene would dearly love to be here tonight, but she is home with Frank and their very sick dog, who's been the last 2 days at the emergency room. So we hope he gets well, and I will share her words. She did go to Israel with a friend when she was about 25 years old, and she went primarily, well, she was going with a friend and she was excited about the trip, but it was 5 months after our mother died, and our mother had never had the opportunity to go, and she always wished that she could go. So Arlene wrote a poem about our mother, and I'll try to read it with her words. Honoring our mother in Israel, by the sea, by the Mediterranean Sea. Dearest mother, I said Kaddish for thee, where the waves rolled out and the waves rolled in Eretz Yisrael, the land you wondered so about. God, hear the prayer I yearn for you to hear. Knowing in your loving hands, for her I need no longer fear. For my mother, so deeply respected and loved, from earth missed so keenly as she peers down from the heavens above. And then, after Arlene's trip to Israel about a month later, when she was reflecting on her trip, she wrote another stanza that says, in clothes of blue and white, here I stand, proudly wearing the colors of the Holy Land. Gazing at the blue Mediterranean Sea, I think with pride of Israel, my heritage and God of thee.
Thank you. And thank you, Diana, for being here. And we do hope that, our pets are part of our families. And so when one of them is sick, it's as if one of our human friends are sick. So we do hope that Arlene's pup is feeling better and is on the mend soon. We will continue with the Amidah on page 46. We'll continue on page 48 and 50. So please join me on page 46. Please rise. Thank
you. Ufi agid tekilatecha Anananananana Adonai Anananananana Svatai Tivtach Anananananana Ufi agid tekilatecha Anananananana Adonai Anananananana Svatai Tivtach Anananananana Ufi agid tekilatecha Anananananana Adonai Anananananana Svatai Tivtach Anananananana Ufi agid tekilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzhak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor Vachanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vikonei Hakol, Vizocher Haseavot Vimachot, Umevi Gula Lifnei Venechem, Liman Shemo Biakava, Melech Otsu Moshiach Umagin, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magin Avraham Vizrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Tav L'Choshiach Morid Hatal, V'chachel Chaim B'chesed, Mechaye HaKol B'rachamim Rabim, So'omef Noflim V'rofei Oholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekaye Bemunato, Lishenei Afar, Michabo Chaba Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Mimi to Mekaye, Umatzmeak Yeshua, Venemanatav Lakayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechaye HaKol.
Page 52.
Atah Kadosh, Yishim HaKadosh, Ukdoshim B'chol Yom, Hallelujah Selah, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh, you are holy, and your name is holy. Those who strive to be holy, declare your glory day by day. Blessed is our God, blessed is the one, O world ablaze with splendor. Atah Kadosh, Hishim HaKadosh, Ukdoshim B'chol Yom, Hallelujah Selah, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
You may be seated. It's at this point in the service where we call upon those that need some healing. So we're going to be turning to page 253 in the middle of the page. And before we recite the Misha Berach, I have a list of individuals who have asked for some healing. Harvey Adaleski, Sherry Alexander, Richard Barker, Layette Berlin, Lynn Birmingham, Raven Chong, Ray Clark, Bruce Cohen, Isidore Cohen, Mary Davis, Stephen Despens, Claire DeVoskin, Mitch Earl, Steve Eckber, Beth Eining, Aaron and Roz Feingold, Kathleen Forstich, Dr. Bruce Fox, Bobby Fredrickson, Lauren Friedman, Bob Gans, Max Gans, Morris Golden, Gloria Goldsmith, Tom Gorgon, Rick Hack, George Campbell Hamilton, Braden Hinnick, Helene Holzman, Blake Hull, Laura Jacoby, John Jenkins, Linda Jenkins, Shannon Jenkins, Al Justan, Layla Kaminier, Jackie Caspin, Marilyn Krasnov, Cindy Levine, Ken Levy, Marcia Levy, Dorothy London, Bob Luciano, Liz Lehman, Lisa Macklin, Jody Batmasha, Roberto Maybisher, Yarden Mayer Benyitzkak, Arnold Mayer, Randy Mitchell, Phyllis Mix, Lowell Morrow, Shana Batmosha, Greg Mosher, Mark Newerman, Arthur Newman, Jacob Newman, Joyce Newman, Kathy Rasnick, David Reckman, Barbara Rittman, Deborah Rohan, Barry Rosenblatt, Norman Rosenblatt, Sherry Rosenblum, Patty Savage, Donald Schaefer, Brian Schneider, Eric Schuster, Julian Seckles, Lee Sexton, Nancy Shalit, Sharon Scherer, Peggy Sharp, Judith Siegel, Carter Silk, Carol Silver, Nicole Aronson Silverman, Dee Singer, Debbie Singerman, Alan Sklarov, Maureen Sklarov, Melissa Smith, Robin Weinstein, Faye Yeager, Paul Zale, and Rochelle Zweiben. At this time, if you have any names that you'd like to add as my hand passes through the congregation, please feel free for prayers of healing. Thank you. Again, page 253, middle of the page.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
I have a reading here as we enter into a moment of silent prayer. I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics, and no services. But I need them. Through prayer, I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love. As I reach upward in prayer, I sense these qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illuminate all of us and to bring that vision to life. We now have a few moments of silent prayer. Offer your own. You may have, there are some prayers on page 56 through 50 through 60.
Oseh Shalom, Ben Ramah, Uyaseh Shalom, Oseh Shalom, Ben Ramah, Uyaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael, V'yimeru Amen. Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael, V'yimeru Amen. And may the one who makes peace in high places, and may the one who makes peace in high places, send peace to us and to all Israel, and let us say Amen. Send peace to us and to all Israel, and let us say Amen. Oseh Shalom.
Oseh Shalom. Thank you. It's at this point in the service where we traditionally hear a sermon. And part of the reason both Blake and I have gone through the service fairly quickly this evening is to give a lot of space for our reflections from some of those participants on the trip. So at this time, to continue this wonderful story sharing with everyone, I call Steve Edelstein forward to share a few words.
Hello. This was Diane and my first trip to Israel, and I would be lying if I said it wasn't something we think about many times during the day, how this trip really hit our inner soul. But I want to take a little different approach. I want to talk about what I consider the miracle of Israel. And I'm not thinking back to 1948. I'm thinking back to Israel today. Surrounded on all sides by enemies who would prefer we didn't exist, by a sea that couldn't care less. And then I look at the divisions within Israel. The ultra-Orthodox, the Orthodox, the Haredi, the Hasids, us heathen reforms. And in spite of all of that, you see a vibrant 21st century country. People who are educated, career-minded, who are building lives, who are creating little things that we take for granted, like Waze, WhatsApp. You see the agriculture is breathtaking in the sheer size and magnitude of it, but the technology underlying it. And somehow, with all of those forces fighting against our survival in our homeland, they make it work. You have to go there to experience that.
Thank you so much for that.
One thing that that also really struck me, and those of you that don't know, this was my 9th trip. It's like, oh, you've been there so many times, you probably have seen it all. What do you want to go for again? And like Addie said at the beginning, it was not a typical trip. We got to see and experience and be inspired to do different things. And I had been to Yad Vashem, I had led the tours, and I took the kids through Yad Vashem. And this trip I saw a quote. And thank goodness someone on the trip took a picture of it because I had forgotten what it was until I saw the picture. And it is, a country is not only what it does, it is also what it tolerates. And that just spoke to me so much from being on the ground in Israel and then also being on the ground here in the United States. And while we were in Israel, a number of individuals chose to participate in many of you have heard about the weekly demonstrations against specifically the judicial reform that's going on in Israel. And so we have a number of people here that wanted to speak on that. And do you have a few words that you wanted to
Sure.
share? Okay.
It was, I guess, Saturday night,
It was
and
Motzei
we,
Shabbat.
half a dozen of us decided to walk from the hotel to the house of the president where the rally was being held. And we came to a stoplight about a block away from the rally. And it was a red light, so we were standing there. And there was a young man there, and he was running in place. He was out for his evening jog. And somehow he heard that we were going to the rally. And so he turned to us and he said, "Are you going to the rally?" And we said, "Yes, we're going to the rally." And he goes, "Well, I disagree with what they're protesting for, but I agree with their right to be able to protest. And I want to thank you for coming and supporting our democracy," which just blew me away. And then we went to the rally, and I have to admit, there were a lot of things I didn't understand because speakers were all very in Hebrew. And there were people there from protesting for different things, not just judicial reform. Some people were protesting, get our soldiers out of the West Bank. And so people were not necessarily all on the same side, seeing eye to eye at this protest with thousands of people. But at the very end of the rally, they all stopped and they all sang the national anthem. It was just a really powerful, powerful moment to see democracy in action. And as we met with the U.S. ambassador to Israel, and he reminded us that Israel has been protesting now, on the weekends, and they get tens of thousands of people. And when you compare that to America, that would be like 1 million people in America protesting every weekend. There's been never any violence, no arrests. They don't trash, the place. Yeah, just amazing. Just something that we can all learn from.
Yes, absolutely. And it was, again, an inspiring moment. And also offering words of reflection, I have Diane Lids that has offered to come forward, and she brought props all the way from Israel. Right in there.
So I really agree with everything that Addie said, and when I stopped to think about what I wanted to share, I was like, there was so much to share. I mean, overall, we saw so many interesting things. We ate great food. We saw the sights, and we had a lot of emotional experiences. We learned a great deal about a lot of important issues, and we deepened relationships with friends we've known for years, and we've made new friends. But I also wanted to talk about the protest. It was something that kind of snuck up on us. It was offered to us as an optional thing to do on Saturday night after Havdalah, and Keith and I weren't sure, is this going to be safe? What's it going to be like? Should we go? And Rabbi Larry and our tour guide, Kari, said, come on, we're going. And we'd been there almost a week, so okay, we can trust them. It's going to be fine. If they say it's good, we can go. But we're still a little bit nervous. And they were leading us down the street. We don't know where we're going. And we had walked a long way that day. And we walked, and we're talking as we're going. And they're like, okay, we can just stand on this side and watch what's going on and see how it goes. And the next thing you know, somebody's handing us these. And this one. And they were like, oh, you're the folks from Georgia. And we're like, yeah, we've been expecting you. And we're like, oh, okay. And it was very overwhelming. And then I saw two people that I recognized from the night before, from Shabbat services. And that was really cool. And one of the men had a little bumper sticker, which I brought home with me, but I gave it as a gift. And it was from the Pride Parade, the demonstrations the week before. And it was like you couldn't find them. And it basically, I think it said, love your neighbor as yourself in Hebrew. And I said to him, where can I get one of those? I want to bring it back to my assistant. And he said, here. And he gave it to me. And I brought it home, and I gave it to my assistant, and he was like, oh my gosh, that's the coolest thing ever. So the demonstration was amazing, and there we are, and we met this woman, a woman named Orly. Big smile on her face. She's handing us these things from the Israel Religious Action Center. And Rabbi said, we're going to be meeting her tomorrow. I was like, oh, okay. She is the executive director of the Israel Religious Action Center, and she was our speaker and guide at the Supreme Court, which is an amazing piece of architecture. I was blown away by it. And then she taught us a good deal about the Israeli government, and I'm kind of a nerd like that. So I was very interested. I could have talked to her all day. But I wanted to share just a couple things that I learned because I had to process it after I got home and had to kind of look it up and oh, that's what she was talking about. So what I learned is that Israel does not have a constitution providing for checks and balances. Instead, the protection of minority rights and civil liberties is rooted in the principles outlined in Israel's Declaration of Independence. And the basic laws, capital B, capital L, are based on the individual liberties that were outlined in the Declaration of Independence and were intended to be draft chapters of a future constitution. Israel does not have a constitution, which I had no idea. So that was interesting to me. I did know that Israel does not have a bicameral legislature. They don't have two houses, or a separate executive branch. That was interesting to me as well. The other thing that was really eye-opening that we learned about was the rabbinical courts, and that the rabbinical courts operate in parallel to the civil court system and have jurisdiction over matters such as marriage, divorce, and conversion. And those courts are not particularly favorable to Reform Jews or women. And so we talked about several of those issues, which is very interesting. And so then I wanted to get an idea of what is this proposed judicial reform that people are talking about and why should we care? So I'm not going to tell you why we should care, but this is what it's about. And this is what people were protesting about mainly, in addition to some other things. And the first is to limit the Supreme Court's power to rule against the legislative and executive branches. And it would give the Knesset power to override the Supreme Court's decisions with a simple majority. And the second would be to remove the Supreme Court's authority to review the legality of Israel's basic laws, which essentially function in the place of the Constitution. And third would give the governing coalition considerably more decisive powers in appointing judges. So I learned a lot, thought I would share that with you, but getting handed these signs and just being in the thick of it and the Havdalah moment was just really cool.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. It's really a miracle, as I believe Steve said earlier, that Blake had mentioned, that with all of those things not in place or in jeopardy, it's still a functioning democracy for now. And at the end, they just stopped and sang Hatikva, like they were one big family. Because as Paula mentioned, at the end of the day, most of the people there are Jewish, which for those of us in the United States, the Jewish population in the United States is pretty much the same number as it is in Israel. But the percentage and the demography and what is spread out is very different. So we do have a few more people that went. So I know that Mr. Marvin Price had some some words to say, specifically tying this all to the demonstration and the experiences in Israel, a little bit about Yad Vashem, and then also some of the more recent experiences here in East Cobb.
My wife Andy and I were very touched going through Yad Vashem, which is the memorial museum for the Holocaust. And as you go through the museum, it's a winding path that takes you through the decades. And it shows in the 1920s and 1930s how the roots of Nazism began, how certain ideals that Jews were controlling the universe or the world were put into place there. You wouldn't think that anyone would understand that or would believe that, but it took hold. And then when the events on Saturday occurred with the swastikas in front of the Chabad and things of that nature, I began to wonder, are we going to be alone again? Are people going to stand away from us? Because one of the things that really impressed me was that they had people that were survivors talking about before the Crystal Knock and stuff like that. Their friends who were friends started to back away from them. They became outsiders. They were taken away from the community. But what really impressed me, and there are several members here that went with me to the East Cobb Methodist Church. They had a program that was set up by them to support us in our community, and us as part of the community. And Rabbi Deutsch said it best. This time, we didn't have to set up the protest. The Christians, the Methodists, there were Muslims there that were supporting us. And that really made me feel that there was some hope for the future, that we're never going to be pushed out of the community again. And I hope that feeling continues. Thank you.
Thank you for those very insightful and inspiring, again, words, especially bringing it home as we've struggled with in the past week. As we connect these dots, I'd like to invite Lisa Malice forward to read and join me in reading the prayer for community on page 258. I have it right here. You want to hold this for me? Okay, so we're at the bottom of page 258, and we're going to read together.
Oh, good.
I have one. It's for you. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit.
Amen.
Amen. Did you want to share a few words?
Yeah, just a few. I was looking forward to this till I remembered it was going to be on Zoom or whatever that's called. So this was my second, I feel like it's my bat mitzvah. This was my second trip to Israel. I hadn't been there in over 38 years. I still can't believe that. I thought, well, I'm going to go back, and life happens. And I mean, it could have been a different country. The only thing that looked familiar was the wall. And even that, everything was built up around it. But of course, it was wonderful to be there. Everybody said everything. I wished I would have bought a t-shirt. I wanted to dress up like how we looked every day, so I did wear my name tag. And I have to tell you on the side, before I just say one other thing, that was really funny. I swear to you guys, I don't know how this happened, but when I got home, my Waze, which you use for directions, was speaking to me in Hebrew. And I never used it in Israel. I mean, it was so crazy, and I loved it, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Of course, it said, what? Well, no, luckily, it would say the streets. Beautiful English, da-da-da-da-da, Salzburg, da-da-da-da. One of my takes that, that spoke to me, I guess, or resonated in my heart, were all the places that we went that were trying to build peace, in small places. The different communities. There's, a preschool, and of course I was like going through my notes, which I thought I was a good note taker. I am not. I'm also a terrible picture taker, so thank you guys who took the amazing pictures. But basically, we went to a little preschool that, has Arab children and Jewish children playing together, hearing each other speaking. And, and the whole idea is, we're all people, we're all human. In fact, it says on the preschool, human first. Then we went to another place where, and of course, like I said, my notes are a mess, Gush Etzion, where there's Israelis and Palestinians living, next to each other. And finally, people started trying to get them to connect. People needed that connection. They needed to know about the other. Not, it's enough you're hating people, but you don't even know that person. So one of the things when we left, he kept making all these quotes, and so I went up to him and said, say that again. But it was just something that kind of spoke to me. We have to find a way to fit two truths into one heart. You do not have to be wrong for me to be right. It's a conflict of identity. We need to recognize the other side and give them the dignity that they deserve. A lot of the things that were going on kept reminding me, sadly, of this country with the Republicans and the Democrats. God forbid it'll get like the way it is there, but people are working on it. And, not all the Israelis agree with it. I mean, the ones fighting, the ones that see, people die that they love because of the other, some of that's hard for them, but they're making strides. And like other people said, the country's just so amazing for all of what they do and all of what they accomplish with all of the pain and the suffering and the fighting and all of that. And I just want to add to that, what really made this trip special for me was being with all of you, and somebody else said it before. We went, we kind of knew some people, we were friends with people, but it brought us together, and we still are all talking to each other on our WhatsApp, and it's just a beautiful thing, and I love you all. We just have to add music to the next trip. We didn't have enough Israeli music. Anyway, Shabbat Shalom.
You are correct. We did not have enough music on our trip. Oh, during Oneg, she'll do a little show and tell with you. I have next that Diana and Bill Lerner to read the prayer for Israel. It's on page 259. I have it open, so you can just make your way forward. The bottom of page 259.
O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Okay. So one of the things that we, in addition to being inspired, I believe it was Herzl that said, if you will it, it's no dream. Have you heard this phrase before? Well, we have a song, and I'm hoping that some of our campers in the back might actually know it. It's the Im Sirtsu, and it's on page 340. It's the fourth song. Those of you that grew up going to camp or youth group may remember this one. So page 340 towards the bottom, Im Sirtsu.
Im Tirtsu, Im Tirtsu, Ein Zo Agada, Ein Zo Agada, ya-da-da-da-da, Liot Hamkoshi Be'artseinu, Be'eretz, Sion, Yerushalayim, Tirtsu, Im Tirtsu, Ein Zo Agada, Ein Zo Agada, ya-da-da-da-da, Liot Hamkoshi Be'artseinu, Be'eretz, Sion, Yerushalayim.
And it's this point that we move on to the Elenu, I
We
believe.
do.
We do. So I'm going to ask everyone to rise and turn to page 282 at the bottom. There we go.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latekedu laliotze bereshit, shelo asonagaye aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot adama, shelo sam kelkenu kachem, vigor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech, malkei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai, l'melech al kol haaretz, v'yom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
You may be seated. It's at this point in the service that we reflect and call upon our memories of those who have passed in the past year, and also whose anniversaries of their passing we recognize. Anniversary of passing is Jerry Benowitz, Rosalind Brenner, Sidney Krasick, Florence Feldstadt, Lily Fewer, Jack Golden, Ida Goldstein, Norton Goldstein, David Green, Jack Hausman, Gussie Jasson, Gail Kaufman, George Krasnov, Hazel Lewis, Henry Melnick, Lena Mix, Alan Natkin, Phyllis Rosenblatt, Beatrice Sarvetic, Marjorie Salvador Schwalier, Edward Silver, Seymour Simgrad, David Solomon, David Max Spanner, Suzanne Stewart, Marilyn Wyman, Renata Renee Zaks, and Rose Zale. In addition to those, we recognize those that have passed in the last year. Paul Graboff, Evelyn Hausman Morris, Evelyn Gross, Larry Bauman, Jack Mendel, Charlene Jacoby, Barbara Wolin Kirschner, Stephanie Cooperman Schulman, Francine Friedlander, Arlene Moynick, Clyde Teasley, Emily Jane Edelstein, Jeffrey Bruce Seiben, Gordon Goldsmith, Hartley Stephen Spat, David Benowitz, Josh Yellen, Leon Rechtman, Robert Shaw, Roger Despins, Elon David Massery, Betty Besser, Marlene Kaplan, Edith Eckber, Jay Anthony, Marcia Kurtz, Bernice Bunny Meyer, Melody Hudgens, Philip Kaufman, Jessica Berkeley, Eva Rothstein, and David Bemis. At this time, if there's another name in your heart that you would like to call forward. And in our congregation, we join those in mourning. So please rise as we recognize those who have perished in the Holocaust and those that have lost their lives in defense of the United States and of Israel. Please join me on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach irute v'yamlich malchute, v'yakol beit yon v'yakol beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kariv v'yimeru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah merach me'olam v'me'omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitvar v'yitverman v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalol v'yishmeid kudashal baruchu. Leilam mimcho birkata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, tam liram v'yam v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah mim shemaya, v'yehi aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Aseh shalom b'mramav,
Uya aseh shalom, aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru amen. You may be seated. I would like to call Sue Eisen forward. She's just like, I just sat down. She has a beautiful story about saying Kaddish.
Well, so this was Alan and I's second trip to Israel.
Speak right in there so everyone
Okay.
else can hear you.
We decided to go on the 2007 trip from Kol Emeth, led by Rabbi Lebo, and it was a end of the year trip. And my mother-in-law graciously funded it, and so my husband and I, his brother Jeff, and his wife Cricket, our two sons, Jonathan and Sam, and even Jonathan's girlfriend Savannah, all 8 of us were going to Israel. And tragically, on Alan's birthday, October 8th in 2007, our youngest son Sam died in a car accident. We did decide to continue to go to the trip, on the trip. It was very hard because it was 2.5 months after losing Sam, and there were points in the trip where I couldn't handle things, and but it was a very meaningful trip. Any trip to Israel is an immense experience, and again, we were surrounded with friends and everything. And all these years later, I wanted to go again because I felt like 15 years later, my head was in a different spot. And even if we went to the exact same things, which we did not exactly go to the exact same things, but even if then, I would see it in a new way and from a different point. And this trip was different in so many ways. And I remember Safat and Masada and the Western Wall as being very, very sad for me on that first trip. And this time, I saw Safat and Masada and from a much happier place. My experience the first time at the Western Wall, one was I was totally overwhelmed with the idea of putting your dearest wish into the wall, because my dearest wish at the time was to have my son back, and I knew that I could not ask that. So there was that conflict. And then, it was my first exposure to, you walk into the women's side, which is less and smaller and further away and so crowded that it's very hard to even get to the wall. And of course, I was lucky I packed my underwear because I didn't have a prayer book. And so I looked around for a prayer book because I wanted to say Kaddish for my son. And all they had were completely Hebrew Orthodox prayer books. And I could not for the life of me find where the mourner's cottage was. My Hebrew was not that good. So I remember it as just being frustrated. And so this time I fell down on the way in, and I was thinking I might not even get to go see the wall, but they bandaged me up quite well, and I'm fully healed. So, but anyway, and I was prepared for going through the side and everything, and I was going to be in the second group for the tour. So I walked over to the women's side, and I'm calmer. I didn't have to come up with my own wish. I had a wish from someone in the congregation to insert into the wall. And this time they had a whole bookshelf on the women's side. And lo and behold, there was a prayer book that was partly in English. So I got that prayer book out. I found the mourner's cottage. I walked to a spot. You can't walk next to the wall on the women's side because there are like 3 deep of people that are staying there, pouring their hearts out. But I went to a nice spot. I opened it, and 15 years late, I said the mourner's cottage for my son, and I felt at peace. It's a prayer that does not mention death, but it is an affirmation of your faith. And in the face of great loss, it gives you comfort from your faith in God. So,
Thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you for that, Sue, because it just reiterates that so much of what we do as a ritual is often not connected in the moment. It's in the moment after the moment after the moment. And when we say Kaddish every year on the anniversary of someone's passing, it helps with our healing as well as being able to remember. So thank you for those words. Thank you. At this point, I'm calling on Cindy because we have a couple more things and then we'll be wrapped up and ready to hit the oneg. So Cindy?
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. As has become our custom on the generally last Friday of the month, we are welcoming anybody who celebrated a wedding anniversary in the month of June to please come forward and receive our congratulations. And we're going to just right in front of the table right here. Can I have you come up, introduce yourself, tell us how long you've been married, and we'll sing a little ditty for you.
Sue and Alan Eisen, June 14th, 1981, 42 years.
Stephen Debbie Antonoff, 1983, 40 years.
How many? 40? Well, we beat you. We're 62
We're
years.
62 years.
Whoa. Cinnamon tub, mazel tov, mazel tov, cinnamon tub, mazel tov, mazel tov, cinnamon tub, mazel tov, mazel tov, cinnamon tub. Yehelanu, 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 Ule Kol Yisrael. Yehelanu, Yehelanu, Ule Kol Yisrael. Cinnamon tov, mazel tov, cinnamon tov, mazel tov, cinnamon tov, mazel tov, cinnamon tov. Yehelanu.
Thank you, and Mazel Tov. And next, I'd like to call Jody forward for her last official Kabbalat Shabbat announcements as president and fearless leader of our congregation.
Well, thank you for that auspicious introduction. Shabbat Shalom. First, I want to thank Lisa Sandler. Thank you so much for the beautiful service. Fantastic job. Fantastic. Thank you. And also to all of those who were here that were on the Israel trip and those of you who shared your stories and your reflections. Beautiful job. Very well done. As the theme was inspirational, I hope that inspired those of you who have not been to Israel or haven't been in a long time to be ready to make that trip as soon as you are able.
And now I'll move to the announcements. You can see our upcoming events in your program handout. I want to briefly draw your attention to a few items because this summer is not a quiet summer for Temple Kol Emeth. There is something going on, and I want you to remember that. So think about joining the TKE Adult Choir. If you enjoy singing, we need you. There are openings for sopranos, for altos, tenors, and basses. Reading music is not required, but singing on key is definitely a plus. Rehearsals for High Holy Day choir participation will begin in August. For more information, contact Bert. Help build a house. The TKE Habitat for Humanity Build Day is on Sunday, July 16th at 1 o'clock p.m. in Mableton. Again, no experience or equipment is necessary. You just need to be at least 16 years of age. See Paula and Paul Wilson after the service, and they are here, and Paula is raising her hand back there, so we know who she is. Or email them at prepwilson@yahoo.com for more information. Vivian? Nothing? What? My last night, and you're not here to say a word? Would you like to say something?
Sure, of course. For all the wonderful women of TKE and those who are about to become members, it's never too late to join Sisterhood. You want friends, you want activities. It's an amazing group of women. We have so much going on this coming year. So please, you can go online and fill out the form, and just in there it tells you what you can pay. And please join us. We're a great group of women.
Amazing. She had no idea I was going to do that, so that was a pretty good on-the-spot moment for WRJ. All right, join L'Chaim, TKE's group for active seniors, for the Best of Broadway Big City Dreams, which is on Sunday, July 16th at the Strand Theater in Marietta Square. Tickets are just $25, and they do need to be purchased by July 6th. After the show, the group will head to Tycoon and Sushi Bar, which is listed here as just 2 blocks away from the theater, but actually it's only a block and a half, for a pay-your-own-way dinner. Purchase your tickets at kolemeth.net. All right, please check out our kolemeth.net and read the Tekiah on Tuesday mornings to learn more about these activities and everything else that's going on, because there's going to be a lot coming up. Following services, please join us for an ONEG co-sponsored by Beth Schwerreiner and Rachel Goldstein of Gold Events by Rachel, who is, by the way, Atlanta Jewish Times, the best of Jewish Atlanta, #1 in party planning, right here in our congregation, who is providing the beautiful floral centerpieces. We look forward to seeing all of you there. And I also would like to acknowledge our Camp Coleman, URJ Camp Coleman Mitzvah Corps young people who are here with us this evening. We really do appreciate having you here. Your energy is infectious, and we love to see you, so do come back. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and that's a wrap.
Thank you. We have one last thing to take care of before we officially move over to eating all of the sweet treats, and that is for Kiddush and Motzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread.
Thanks, God.
Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
And this will be in the Oneg for you. Shabbat Shalom.